So yes, first of all, thank you very, very much for inviting me to speak on behalf of the European Disability Forum. So we are very pleased to receive this invitation, and of course delighted to see the importance that Finland and other Nordic countries are giving to the topic of independent living and legal capacity. So I represent EDF, so as I said, the European Disability Forum, and we are an umbrella organization of persons with disabilities based in Brussels, with members in all European countries, so members at the national level, but also at the European level, representing the diversity of persons with disabilities. So I just wanted to give you a bit of information on who we are to start with, to reset that we are led by persons with disabilities and their families, that we have members from different disability groups, so people with intellectual disabilities, psychosocial disabilities, physical disabilities, so all types of disabilities. And we work on a variety of topics, so including equality and non-discrimination, autonomy, legal capacity, access to justice, social policies, transport. So all topics that are important to ensure that people with disabilities are fully included in our societies. And also one of the reasons why I was so delighted that we were invited is that legal capacity and independent living is really one of the key area that we work on at the moment, and a key priorities for almost all of our members at national level. So what I will do in my presentation is to briefly talk about the importance of legal capacity and how it connects to independent living. So sometimes I refer to legal capacity, sometimes I refer to the right to choose. We try to use both words because we think that the right to choose, autonomy, is actually a bit clearer about what we mean depending on the audience. Then I will present our report on the topic of legal capacity, autonomy, and the right to choose that was published last year. I will share some example of good practices when it comes to support, so supported decision making, and at the end, some recommendation. So I will try to be clear, and of course, please do not hesitate to let me know if I'm almost reaching the end of my time, so I know when to conclude. But of course, I also have my own watch. So when it comes to the right to choose and receive support, so it is a requirement for people with disabilities to be able to fully independent their equal rights. So the right to choose is really connected to all area of life, and we believe to all key principle under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I was able to follow a bit the first part of the discussion, and we're very happy to see that the Commission presented their new guidance on independent living, and that work is being done to ensure autonomy of people. And now it's great that you will put more focus also on what in practice that means to support people in the decision making. What the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is clear about is that when we talk about protecting people's rights, this is not about putting them through quote unquote protection measures. It's really to ensure that their rights are respected. So we need to give them the support and the tools that are needed for them to be autonomous, to be the owner and the leaders in how they take decisions, how they make decisions, and how those decisions are respected. So that's what we're really talking about. Not about protecting people, but protecting the right of people to be treated equally and to make their own decision. I think that's something that is really important to mention, because sometimes there are a bit of confusion. We try to protect people instead of protecting their actual rights. Of course, legal capacity, so Article 12 of the UN Convention is closely related to independent living, Article 19. That's something that the UN has been very clear about. Legal capacity and support and the right to choose is also a requirement for independent and community living. So, as I said, people must be supported in making their own choice and decision. And what is clear also under the UN Convention is that this has become, and this is an obligation for all European states, so EU member states, but also all the states of the member of the Council of Europe, and an obligation for the European Union. So yes, we heard about the guidance on independent living. This is a good start, but we also hope that the EU, the European Commission, will also do more specifically on legal capacity and on supported decision making. So this was just a brief overview on how we see and how the UN Convention see the right to choose and receive support. Then I wanted to share with you some of the information that we collected in what we call our Human Rights Report on legal capacity that was published in September. It's available online, and I hope maybe the report itself could be shared with the participant after the meeting. But in this report, we decided to cover different issues related to legal capacity and the right to choose. So first, we explain what legal capacity is, so what is meant by this under the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. And then what we did is look at what we call the state of play. So to give an overview of the existing laws in each EU member state and whether we believe or we assess that they comply or not with the right of persons with disabilities. We also reveal some links between denial of legal capacity and different forms of human rights violation that are happening in Europe. And then also to be more practical and to share also progress, we also give example of good and promising practices that we found in different countries. And that could be actually used as a model or inspiration by others. And then at the very end of our report, we give recommendation to the EU, to the Council of Europe, and to all European countries. So I will go through some of those recommendations, but also feel free to directly see them in details in our report. In terms of the key finding, so we explain that what is clear is that Article 12 of the UN Convention oblige countries to change their laws and their policy on legal capacity to move from what we call substituted decision making, so the removal of this ability to make decision in practice, to supported decision making, so that people have full ownership and support in making their own decision. This is normally the obligation that countries have. We see that despite this very clear obligation, there are still many gaps and challenges in the EU. There have been progress, so we cannot deny that, and that's very positive, but there are still many gaps to fully protect the right of persons with disabilities. We also saw that many forms of human rights violation happen because of deprivation of legal capacity. We do believe that providing support will actually reduce the human rights violations that are currently happening. And then we also explain in our report that person with intellectual disabilities, with Alzheimer, older person with psychosocial disabilities, and women are also at higher risk of violation of their rights. You will find in our report a few maps of what's happening in different countries, and then you can identify whether your countries do not respect the UN Convention, whether it's almost there, or whether it's like actually very close to to respecting fully their rights. What we found is that no EU member states fully respect the rights of persons with disabilities when it comes to legal capacity. So in red, we have 12 EU countries that still allow full deprivation of legal capacity. So the country can really say, well, that person cannot make decision in most area of life, so they will have a representative who will make a decision for them. At the time of the reports, because we didn't check whether there's been change in any of the country, but at the time of the report, that was like, and that's still the case in France, in Italy, in Estonia, for example. We found that in 9 countries there is partial deprivation of legal capacities that is allowed by law, which is the case in Latvia, in Finland, in Lithuania, Slovenia, and all the countries that are in purple on the map. And then we have 6 EU countries that almost fully managed to abolish deprivation of legal capacities, with still some exceptions. So that's why we say like no European country is doing it perfectly, but they changed their law to make sure that the main principle is on support and ownership of the decision by the person with disabilities. And the most recent changes have been in Spain and Ireland. What is also important to know is that legal changes is not sufficient. So, for example, in the map we have Portugal in green, but what was reported to us by our member is that even if the law changed, the practice didn't change at all. So in practice, courts continue to deprive people of their legal capacity, to put them under guardianship, strict guardianship measures, and so on. So a disclaimer is that it's not because we have a country in green on the map that the practice necessarily is perfect. So it's very important also for us now to follow up with our member organization about how the law is implemented, because we heard, and that's highlighted in our report, that in the case of Portugal, there are many issues. In parallel to this, we also mapped the countries that also in their law have developed supported decision-making systems. So that's sometimes in parallel of full deprivation of legal capacity being allowed. But the positive thing is that there are also formal way established by law to also give support to people. So of course, us from the disability movement, what we ask is that the law would be changed and that the focus would be fully on supports. And also what is important to know is that here we only mapped countries that have supported decision-making in their laws, but we also know that there are also formal or informal form of support that exist outside of the law. But when it's not really as a full law or national policy, it might not be
Excuse me,
accessible.
Marie.
Yes.
You have about 3 minutes left, so yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's also important to know that there are practices outside of the law that exist. In terms of human rights violation linked to deprivation of legal capacity, that's something that you will also find in our report. Institutionalization, that's something you talked about earlier. Forced treatment and placement in psychiatry, still happening in all European countries. Forced sterilization, forced contraception, forced abortion, that is also based on deprivation of legal capacities. And then we also put a few European issues. Our report also focused on promising practices. So I wanted to give 2 examples. So I mentioned before Ireland and Spain that recently reformed their law. And what you can find in those countries is that really the focus is on the possibility for the person to first have access to support of voluntary nature or assisted decision-making. So the person with a disability can decide on one or several support person who will assist them in the decision they make. There are also possibility of co-decision-making agreements in Ireland. So there is an agreement that is signed that the decision will be made with a supporter. But the person with disability keep the ownership of deciding who that support person is and whether they want to remove that supporter from their support mechanism. It's also the case in Spain. The support mechanism is actually led by the person with disability themselves. And it's also important to know that in Spain, it is open to people with disabilities, but also older person or anyone who needs support. Then briefly, you will also find in our reports specific program that exists to support people in their choice and life. So personal ombuds in Sweden, open dialogue approach in several countries, personal assistant budgets. So it's also interesting to look into those, keeping in mind that sometimes it focuses on only specific person with disabilities, and that it also depends on the budget that is allocated by the states. In 1 minute, I'll finish with my our recommendation. So what is really needed is first a change of laws and policies to make them in line with the UN Convention and to really have this approach based on the autonomy, on the ownership of the decision by the person. Then to focus on effective implementation. So to make sure that laws and policy become reality. So that means awareness raising, training for all professionals, and also dedicated fundings. Then the next step is to monitoring progress and challenges. And then, of course, in all of this, it's very important to consult and involve various stakeholders, including representative organization of persons with disabilities. And on this, I will stop. Thank you very much.